Hello again, and thank you as you join me to continue our Daniel Bible study. So last time we did up to verse 12 of Daniel chapter 1. Today we will continue with verse 13, and this is what it says. So 12 said, "Prove your servants, I beg you, for 10 days, and let them give us vegetables and water to drink." Verse 13 says, and let our countenance be looked upon before thee, and the countenance of the children that eat the portion of the king's meat. And as you see, deal with our servants. It's interesting that Daniel says, please, I beg you, try for 10 days the diet of vegetables and water. And then after the 10 days, once you see the results, you compare us to them, to those that are eating the king's food. And then you decide, whatever you want to do, we will follow. We will obey. We will do. And verse 14 says, so he consented, he is Melzar, consented to them in this matter and proved and tested them for 10 days. Remember, Daniel purposed in his heart to be faithful and obedient to God. And God works behind the scenes to help him be obedient to his commandments. And we see the results of God's help when we decide to be obedient to him. We see it in verse 14. Because Melzar consents, he agrees to this deal of 10 days, giving them vegetables to eat and just pure water to drink. Verse 15, and at the end of 10 days, their countenances appear fairer and fatter in flesh than all the children which did eat the portion of the king's food. Did you hear that? Their faces, their physiques is compared to the children that were following the king's diet just after 10 days. And now the final test is done. And you know what they find out? They actually find out that the 4 Hebrew boys that stuck to God's diet were fairer, were fatter in flesh. They look better than the children that followed the king's diet. You know what? It makes me wonder, what if? Just what if you and I would stick to God's diet to see what happens to our faces, to our physique in just 10 days of eating vegetables and drinking water? You know, this is a great challenge. I don't know about you, but I would love to try it because it seems somehow that just the plain diet that God provides for us in the Bible of vegetables and water actually has some positive results. Verse 16, then Melzar took away the portion of their meat and their wine that they had to drink and gave them vegetables. Melzar sees the difference. He was afraid that if the 4 Hebrew boys did not follow the king's diet, they would look worse. Their physique was going to be worse than the children that followed the diet of the king. By Melzar confirms with his own eyes that the diet of the 4 Hebrew boys is superior to the king's food and wine. The results are visible. So Melzar says, okay, I see the results. I will continue with your request. He takes away the meat of the king. He takes away the wine of the king and gives the Hebrew boys vegetables to eat and water to drink. If 10 days made a difference in their life, imagine a lifestyle of the simple, healthy diet. I wonder, I can imagine that those 4 young men were never sick. I find it quite interesting that I have friends and nieces and that have gone to medical school. And the one thing that they tell me is that nutrition barely taught in medical school. Because if a medical student goes to school, they should actually be able to learn the effect that food has for our physical well-being. Daniel was not a medical student, but he knew that God's advice on food and diet was powerful, and he chose to obey. And the results are incredible. Listen to verse 17. As for these 4 children, God gave them knowledge and skill in all learning and wisdom. And Daniel had understanding in all visions and dreams. When you're faithful to God, you actually are the recipient of his blessings. They were healthy, and on top of that, they were intelligent, but they were actually wise. You know what wisdom is? Wisdom is the ability to be able to discern between good and evil. And once you discern between good and evil, you choose what's good and you reject what's bad. Because what's evil will affect negatively your life. And these 4 young men, 16 years old, were wise beyond their years. Now I do have a question. I wonder if Daniel just came up with this diet of vegetables and water out of the blue. Or I wonder if somehow back home, back there in Israel, he and his family already practiced this diet. I am sure that this did not occur to him that vegetables and water was good for you. I am certain that Daniel knew from experience back home, that's how they ate. And he knew that his parents were healthy, he was healthy, and his siblings were healthy. And not only healthy physically, but intellectually and spiritually, they were blessed by the diet that God had provided for all humanity. I know you want to know what's going to happen next, but again, you have to join me next time, because now it's just going to get more interesting. Thank you for joining me, and I'll see you next time.